In the last few weeks, a large amount of ugly, malicious information has been released into the media about me.
This investigation regarding Mr. Jackson involves allegations of child molestation, 288A of the California Penal Code.
And I will not be a silent collaborator of his crimes.
Were you ever accused of having sexually molested Brett Barnes?
Won't answer that.
The strain of the ongoing investigation is clearly taking its toll.
I'm behind my son. I don't believe any of this stuff that's being written about him.
We support our brother wholeheartedly.
The felony complaint involves 9 counts.
So has the star simply buckled under pressure? Was the strain too much of seeing his accuser in court?
But in the end, he simply couldn't afford to live in a fantasy.
Breaking news for you tonight. The singer Michael Jackson is reported to have died from a heart attack.
Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine.
Intense sexual abuse. Being heard is a powerful thing. We can't control what people believe.
The information is disgusting and false.
My name is Mike Smallcombe. I'm a journalist based in the UK, and I've written a book on the career and life of Michael Jackson. But after Michael Jackson passed away, being a journalist, I read a few of his biographies and being interested in his life and career, and all of them were focused on his personal life. You know, here we've got probably the biggest music superstar ever, and there's not really any literature, any books out there that cover his career. So loving research, being a journalist, and Michael Jackson being a topic I was interested in, I thought, there's a real gap in the market there. Why can't I be the person who writes something like that?
I'm Mark Lester, long-time friend of Michael's. So I've known Michael since about 1978. Michael was touring with the Jacksons. He came over to the UK and his manager phoned me up and said Mike would like to meet me. So we met. When I was waiting on the other side of the door before I met him for the first time, I didn't know what to expect. I thought he was going to answer the door in a spacesuit, or he was be levitating, or just something like weird. But he wasn't. He was just a completely normal guy. We're both the same age, within a month. Michael was born in August, I was born in July, 58. Michael showed me all these magazines, pop magazines, Tiger Beat, Teen Magazine, which were big in the States. Whenever there was an article with Michael was in it, usually I would be somewhere in that magazine as well. So there was some kind of association with that Michael picked up on.
My name's Lucy Lester and Michael is my godfather. I was 12 when I first met him. He flew us over to Las Vegas, and that's where we had the naming ceremony. I never grew up listening to his music or anything, so to me it wasn't Michael, like the pop star. It was just Michael, my dad's best friend.
My name's Matt Fidesz. I was Michael Jackson's friend and bodyguard for a number of years. People have to understand I wasn't with him 24 hours a day. I think when people try and say, are you close to him or are you friends with him? This guy's the biggest superstar on earth.
When Michael was on stage, he owned it. It was an incredible transformation.
Being on stage at the age of 5, that's all he ever knew. It was in the Jackson 5, of course, and tremendously successful, and it led him to be one of the richest people in entertainment ever, and to be adored by millions of fans around the world. So that's a great, great privilege. Of course, we know the flip side to that with Michael Jackson, and the burden of that.
I always likened him to being sort of a member of the royal family. He was born into it. He didn't know any different. So his perception of the world was completely different from my reality, your reality.
He would say it was the greatest thing that happened to him, but then also he would like to have been given a choice to be a superstar, because he can't remember not being Michael Jackson, the famous guy who couldn't go anywhere.
There's one story in particular that he would say, and he was recording with Motown, and he was in the studio with his brothers, and he could hear children playing in the playground opposite. And he just wished that he could just go over there and, you know, be himself, be a child, but he couldn't because he was recording. And there was a time when brothers were due to go to South America to tour. And in the car on the way to the airport, he was just crying because he didn't want to go. He just wanted to stay and be a child, play. But he couldn't do that. And that had a massive impact on him as an adult. Obviously, this obsession with childhood, building Neverland Ranch, wanting to be with children, always trying to compensate for that childhood that he never had.
I think the way to describe him, he was the biggest media manipulator there is in the world, where he could control the media in certain ways, and at the same time it would backfire on occasions, and no one wanted to tell him that it's the wrong thing to do. You know, this may look the wrong way from the public's point of view.
He told me that he was an illusionist, so if he wanted to create a stir with the press, all he had to do was go out of the hotel in a wheelchair, and then all of a sudden the whole of the world's press was like, oh, Michael Jackson in a wheelchair. And then he'd just get out the wheelchair and get in the car. One of his favorites was surgical mask. He'd walk around with it and they were like, what's going on here? You know, why is he wearing a surgical mask? It was for illusion. So he knew kind of a little bit how to play and to toy with the press, but in other ways he was incredibly naive.
Weird stories about Michael Jackson's soul. The fact that Michael was a bit eccentric helped that. So this mystery persona, I mean, wow, you know, he sleeps in an oxygen chamber. He lives on a theme park. His skin color's changed. You name it.
Sadly, it kind of came round and it bit him on the backside a bit.
Unfortunately, it was partly Michael's fault, the mysterious aspect of his life, the weird stuff coming out in the 80s. That was slightly his fault with his PR campaign, but that was quite innocent stuff, really. The chamber, Bubbles the monkey, Elephant Man Bones. It just got really, really vicious and negative and totally backfired, unfortunately. The team around Michael stopped having his best interests at heart in 1995. So from 97 to 2009, Michael had, writing my book, I had to get my head around this. 10 different managers, different accountants, different lawyers. It was a mess, complete and utter mess. Partly Michael's fault, but they have a duty representing him to have his best interests at heart, and they didn't. Their own interests at heart. In '93, the civil lawsuit filed by the Jordan Chandler family and the police report, that was simultaneous. Once Michael Jackson had settled that civil lawsuit, the reasons being not because he wanted to hush the Chandler family, the reasons are actually quite incredible.
I can't speak for Michael, but I know one thing. Michael is not guilty. I've talked to him before, and I think he'll be fine because he had nothing to be ashamed of.
He's strong.
So he's very strong. He'll just come out.
A judge ruled that the civil lawsuit would be heard first. Because it was a minor, I think he ruled that, okay, we're going to have to hear this within 120 days from this date. Michael's lawyers were like, hey, we want the criminal trial first, because the civil lawsuit, that could really prejudice a criminal trial. Why? Because if we have a court hearing between the Chandlers and Michael's defense in a civil lawsuit, the Chandlers and their attorneys will know what Michael's defense is going to be. That's massively prejudicial for any criminal trial. You wouldn't get a fair criminal trial because you've had this civil thing going on before. The important one was the criminal one because you could end up in jail. The civil one is just about money. But if you're hearing the civil one first, and that could help get you in jail, Michael's team was like, the only option we've got, because the judge ruled the civil one is going to be heard first, is to get rid of it. How do you get rid of it? You have to settle. That made Michael look guilty. What is he hiding? Why is he paying off this family?
If this really went on, do you think a father would accept money, that would make it okay, that would make everything all right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I know that if that were my son, I'm sorry. I don't care if you gave me $1 billion. I want to see you either behind bars or dead for the rest of your life for doing that to my son or my daughter. It's crazy. The guy was after money is what he wanted.
I totally disagreed with him doing that. He should not have given him anything. But if there had been any criminal activity, you can't pay off the cops or the legal system. They will go after you because they want to. You can't just say, "Hey, I'll pay the fine," because it doesn't work like that. Because if they had pursued it through the criminal courts, they didn't.
We have concluded that because the young boy who was the catalyst for this investigation has recently informed us that he does not wish to participate in any criminal proceeding where he is named as a victim, that we must decline prosecution involving Mr. Jackson.
People don't know the ins and outs of why he was forced to make that settlement. He didn't want to, he wanted to fight them both. So that was 93 gone.
I think he got over that quite quickly and just pushed that one aside. The second time with the Arvizo case, now that was around 2003. At that time I'd seen quite a lot of Michael and going backwards and forwards to the States, spending a lot of time at Neverland, and I was at Neverland for a great deal of the time when the Arvizo family were there, and they were awful.
When we heard that police were at Neverland, me and Mark spoke and we knew exactly, we're talking Gavin Arvizo and his family, and that was before it was even, we'd been told, or the media had even announced it. We knew because they were just causing havoc.
Basically, the boy was recovering from cancer, and Michael had said to him in the hospital that if you ever want to come to Neverland, you know, be my guest, come. And of course, the mother had overheard this, and like, right, yeah, we're going. Okay, so they turn up at Neverland, and it was just initially the boy and his mum. They were made to feel very welcome and put up in one of the guest lodges. But they stayed for like 3 months. And then all of a sudden, all these cousins appeared. And at one time, there was like 15 of these like kids, and they were running riot around Neverland.
Anyone could clearly see that they were taking advantage of Michael because he had such a big heart and he wanted people to come to Neverland. He wanted them to have this amazing experience. And I think it's quite sad that people must portray that as, if you're being kind, you must be preying on people. There must be something sinister behind it, when all he wanted to do was just make people happy.
They were just like hooligans. And then it came to a time when they were asked to leave. The next day is when I think their mother turned really nasty and then made all these allegations about Michael.
Years ago, I allowed a family to visit and spend some time at Neverland. Neverland is my home. I allowed this family into my home because they told me their son was ill with cancer and needed my help. Through the years, I have helped thousands of children who are ill or in distress. These events have caused a nightmare for my family, my children, and me. I never intend to place myself in so vulnerable a position ever again.
The service of the warrants was part of an ongoing investigation alleging criminal misconduct on the part of Michael Jackson. The basis for this investigation regarding Mr. Jackson involves allegations of child molestation, 288A of the California Penal Code. Additionally, an arrest warrant for Mr. Jackson has been issued on multiple counts of child molestation. The bail amount on the warrant has been set at $3 million. At this point in time, Mr. Jackson's been given an opportunity to surrender himself to the custody of the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department within a specified period of time. We are currently working with Mr. Jackson's legal representation on this matter.
Sham of a trial, again about money, because Arvizo's mum first went to a civil lawyer to try and get a settlement of some sort. But the civil lawyer said, you need a conviction first. And that's the only reason why there was a criminal trial first.
This case is about one thing only. It's about the dignity, the integrity, the decency, the honor, the charity, the innocence, and the complete vindication of a wonderful human being named Michael Jackson.
I would like to thank the fans around the world.
Can you speak up, please?
I would like to thank the fans around the world for your love and your support from every corner of the earth. My family, who's been very supportive. My brother Randy, who's been incredible. I want to thank the community of Santa Maria. I want you to know that I love the community of Santa Maria very much. It's my community. I love the people. I will always love the people. My children were born in this community. My home is in this community. I will always love this community from the bottom of my heart. That's why I moved here. Thank you very much.
The first thing wasn't going to the police saying this is what happened. The first step was civil lawyer, money.
But the media wanted that crash, bang. You know, the guy who's come from nothing, and then you see him in the handcuffs. The money would have been in if he was found guilty for the media. That would have been there. And the media outside was just unbelievable. You've never seen anything like it.
In America, the coverage of the trial was abhorrent. Certain things would be said in court, and then a completely different thing would be reported in the media. Just no wonder that, you know, non-fans, members of the public were outraged that Michael Jackson was found not guilty, because they'd read this coverage of Michael for 5 months, thinking that this was the coverage in the court when it wasn't.
The recent publicity about these settlements is unfair and damaging to him, his family, and his dedication to the world's children. The charges he faces are false and will be battled in a court of law within our justice system. He is innocent and will be vindicated.
It was a disgrace. The media was parading around this narrative that Michael Jackson was guilty. How can a jury find him not guilty given what's happened in that courtroom? But that wasn't the case. In fact, what was heard in the courtroom was highly in Michael's favor. After the prosecution case was put forward, the defense were thinking, are we even going to bother here? Because the jury was ready to declare Michael Jackson not guilty after the prosecution case. But the defense decided, you know, we're going to hammer the nail in the coffin of all of this.
The only people that really mattered were 12 jurors and 1 judge, 13 people. The rest were just extraneous as far as we were concerned. You had to drown out the media. They were just a distraction. They had their own agenda, which was ratings and revenue, not justice. And you had to just focus on the evidence, focus on the courtroom, and stay away from them.
I think Michael is one of those rare clients where lawyers really don't have to prep a lot. You don't even have to coach him in terms of how he should behave in the courtroom. He was just so well behaved naturally without even having to tell him to do anything other than just be himself.
How he survived 2 years where you're possibly going to live the rest of your life behind bars, I don't know. I would have taken a gun and shot myself. But he was very strong, and he was someone who knew he had done nothing wrong, and he just believed in his conviction, so I handed it to him. But it was tough.
The image and persona that the tabloid press saw of Michael was not the man, not the true Michael Jackson. And I think because he was different, he didn't conform to the norm, people didn't like that. There was this kind of witch hunt about getting this man because he just didn't conform to how they wanted him to.
In the UK, there seemed to be this top-down agreement since the late 80s that Michael Jackson was to be smeared. Reporters would be told, all we're going to report on is negative Michael Jackson stories because it sells papers. So the red tops, they all agreed on that. You still see that today. So that's a 30-year thing in the UK. Wacko Jacko, all the newspapers. And now again, 2 accusers, 2013, going to a civil lawyer and saying, I want to sue Michael Jackson's estate.
Yeah, you know, there's been different times where it'll just be me and Michael. Then there'll be other times where he has other friends over too. That's what, like what Brett said, it's just a slumber party. We just have a lot of fun.
We just have a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
Intense sexual abuse. So yeah, that had to be clear.
If I can just say, you know, for decades, Jackson put up this smokescreen, which was reinforced by, you know, his family and the media as well.
The allegations were nothing new. Obviously, I didn't know there was going to be a film. I knew about the allegations because Wade Robson and James Safechuck sued the Michael Jackson estate all the way back in 2013. So this is something that's very much under the radar, rumbled on and on. How that all started, Wade Robson tried to get a job with the Michael Jackson estate, being the lead choreographer on the Cirque du Soleil show.
I'm starting on Cirque du Soleil Michael Jackson show. So it's, you know, the equivalent of the Beatles' Love show that they have, or the Elvis show, but for Michael.
Didn't get the job. Was at crossroads in his career, lacking finances, not really knowing where to turn. He was desperate to get this job. Been praising Michael ever since Michael died. Went to his memorial service at Staples Center, saying in interviews how Michael was this great friend of his.
Michael was such a huge part of my career and life. We were friends for 20 years before he passed, since I was 7. So it's an opportunity for me to give back a little bit to his legacy. It's such a big part of his legacy, and to make sure as much as I can that it's done right and that it really represents his essence.
Didn't get the job, didn't know what to do, was having this sort of breakdown. And he started to write a book about Michael and tried to shop that book around. And in it claimed that Michael Jackson had abused him. No one would have it. So that was when Wade Robson went to a civil lawyer and looked at his options and eventually filed a creditor's claim against the Michael Jackson estate. It was initially $1.5 billion. I don't have an intrinsic knowledge of the ins and outs of how much it eventually was, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars. He actually filed that lawsuit initially under seal. So if you file something under seal, it doesn't become public record. He was hoping that the estate would go, oh, here's X amount of money, let's keep this quiet, here's your money, go away. But the estate was like, no chance, we're going to fight this. That's when it became public. I'll go back to James Safechuck. He was watching Wade Robson. This was May 2013, watching Wade Robson on TV, one of the TV shows in America, where Wade Robson says, you know, I was abused and all this stuff happened to me. And James Safechuck said in his sworn declaration, that was what triggered something in his mind, made him realize, oh, I've been abused by Michael Jackson too. There have been so many inconsistencies in terms of when they knew about this alleged abuse. Wade Robson is saying that in 2005, I testified in Michael's defense because I saw his children. Michael was a friend. I didn't want him to go to jail. That's why I did it. And yet then he's saying that he only realized that he was abused in 2012-13, so you got that inconsistency. It's the same with Safechuck. 2005, claiming that he was asked to testify in Michael Jackson's trial, which is not true. Early on in the trial, a judge ruled that any evidence as per James Safechuck would not be admitted, would not be allowed in the trial. Yet in the documentary, we see Safechuck saying that Michael called me, Michael's lawyers called me, I refused to testify. He's saying that he knew about the abuse in 2005. Michael's a bad man, I'm not going to testify. And then he says that the Wade Robson TV show is what triggered him into realizing that he was abused. So you've got them saying, okay, we suddenly realised in 2012-13, but hey, we knew in 2005, because Wade Robson, I was protecting Michael Safechuck. I wasn't going to testify because he's a bad man. That's when James Safechuck filed a copycat lawsuit. So from 2013 until 2017, you've got this ongoing litigation with the estate. Eventually, a judge threw out the lawsuit because of a thing called statute of limitations. They just basically filed it too late. A year later, you've got the documentary announcement being made.
And I watched it, and I was saddened by the show. You know, victims of child abuse is a very, very serious matter. But it didn't really push anything about the child abuse thing. I don't know. I watched it, and all it was like watching a court case where you heard the prosecution and no defense. It was so totally unbalanced. And I don't know, it made me feel sick.
That was, for them, the obvious route. Let's make this thing public. Let's make this a worldwide issue. Can this help our appeal, which isn't mentioned in the documentary, against the decision by a judge to throw out the case?
It's like I don't feel like they want justice. If that was me, that would be above anything. That is what I would want. I wouldn't want to be going, in front of a camera, talking about my experience to people that don't know me. The first thing I would do is go to the police. I wouldn't be thinking like how, let's turn this into a book. Let's go and sue the family. Because who does that?
I couldn't speak the truth any earlier than I did. I wish I could have. I wish I was emotionally and mentally capable earlier than I was.
I think being heard is, probably one of the number one wants of a victim. But, also when all this goes away and the interest goes away, we're still left with being abused.
So much silence and so much isolation, which I experienced, James experienced, and most survivors experience. So being heard is a powerful thing. We can't control what people believe. That's up to people's own journey.
All of Michael's accusers, it's always been about money.
It's never because there's evidence that he's done this or done that. It's always money, or always going for the money first, or they wait till he dies and goes for the money because they know a criminal trial won't work. So it's always financial.
Let's start at the beginning. So when there's money involved, that automatically should make people wary. What are their intentions here? And then you've got previous behavior in court. Wade Robson and Jimmy Safechuck are perjurers because they testified under oath. So Safechuck back in '93 and Robson, Michael Jackson never did anything. Sworn declaration signed under penalty of perjury. 2005, Wade Robson testified in court under oath, under penalty of perjury. Nothing ever happened.
What I find odd is the fact that Mesereau, Michael's lawyer, who is an extremely high-powered lawyer, would have obviously interviewed this kid in depth, and he was talking about one of the top lawyers in America, and if he was convinced that, he was safe to put on the stand, I don't know. It baffles me.
So already you've got credibility issues there. So you've got the financial aspect, and you've got the credibility due to previous statements. If there was a court case, if Michael Jackson was alive, Michael's defense would try and impeach those witnesses by bringing into evidence previous inconsistent statements, and that would include Michael Jackson never did anything, under oath, under penalty of perjury. That alone is enough to make all these allegations highly not credible. The first time that Wade Robson alleges that he was abused by Michael Jackson was in January 1990. The Robson family went to Record One Studios while Michael was working on the album that became Dangerous. And Michael said, why don't you come up to Neverland for the weekend? to the whole family, the whole Robson family. So that was Wade, Chantal, his sister, Mother Joy and her parents, so Wade's grandparents, all whisked up to Neverland for the weekend. They stayed for 2 nights, the whole family, and both Wade and Joy Robson said under oath that those first 2 nights, Wade and Chantal slept with Michael in Michael's bedroom. Nothing happened. Wade says in the documentary, nothing happened.
And, you know, I've slept in the same bed as Michael. It's just you watch cartoons, you fall asleep. You know, it's just a friendship. And I know he would never do anything to hurt my brother. He's the nicest guy you've ever met.
I've been there when these kids have been in Michael's room. I've been there with them. It's just party time. They watch videos, they eat junk food, they play video games. They play so hard. They fall asleep. They're exhausted. They fall asleep. There's nothing more to it than that.
From your standpoint, does it seem unusual for a 34-year-old man to have kids sleeping over?
Not when you know Michael's background. Under normal circumstances, possibly yes. But Michael, everybody knows he didn't have a childhood.
Then the rest of Robson's family went away to the Grand Canyon. Wade says that after the first couple of nights, he saw Michael hunched in a corner crying because he didn't want the Robson family to leave him. But the Robson family was touring America at the time. So the story goes that Wade stayed at Neverland and the rest of the family went away to the Grand Canyon, leaving little 7-year-old Wade Robson alone at Neverland. And he says that slowly, as those days went on, he was abused by Michael Jackson for the first time. And goes into real vivid detail about that. This whole story that happened that first time, that first weekend. So I had a source who could provide me with some court transcripts. Joy Robson, a deposition from '93. And I discovered that during that deposition, Joy Robson said that, yeah, we went to Neverland for the weekend, the whole family. Stayed a couple of nights, and then the whole family then went off to the Grand Canyon. So I didn't leave Wade behind. She then said that again in 2016 in a deposition for the civil lawsuit, which is very odd because Wade's whole story is, I was left behind while my family went off to the Grand Canyon. But Joy Robson says that the whole family went, naming Wade as having gone with them. And Joy has also previously testified under oath that the first time Wade was alone with Michael at Neverland was '93. And then in a totally different case, Wade Robson in 2005 also says, first time I was alone with Michael was in 1993. So you've got these statements made by both Joy and Wade under oath on 3 or 4 occasions where their story is, we stayed 2 nights, we went off to the Grand Canyon, all of us. Wade Robson has never been at Neverland alone until 1993. It's not just getting dates mixed up because Joy Robson was an adult in the early 90s and she gave this deposition 2 years after the first Neverland trip. She would have remembered then, you know, that first weekend in Neverland. Wade came with us to the Grand Canyon. So it's not 15 years later, oh, did he, didn't he? No, they said Wade came with us to the Grand Canyon. Why would you then lie about that? In the Leaving Neverland documentary, James Safechuck gives this detailed story about how he was abused in different places around Neverland by Michael Jackson, including the Grand train station, which people will know because of the floral clock in front of it. It's quite an iconic piece. So he goes into this detail about how he was abused in a room upstairs, and pictures appear on the screen. So it's definitely that train station. And he says it happened every day. And he says how it's something that happens when you first get into a relationship and things are exciting. That to me would indicate that he's talking about the start of when he was abused by Michael Jackson, allegedly. So his time period where he alleges he was abused, again, signed 2 sworn declarations under penalty of perjury that he was abused between 1988 and 1992 until he was 14. The narrative of the whole thing is that I got too big, I got too old, Michael moved on. He started phasing me out and replaced me, essentially. So if we've got that timeline of I was abused between 88 and 92, the train station abuse must have happened during that time period. And a fan pointed out that the train station didn't open until 1994, by which time Safechuck was 16. They got a couple of pictures, a couple of Associated Press and Getty Images pictures, some footage of Neverland from '91, Elizabeth Taylor's wedding, and footage above Neverland from a helicopter, no train station. So the fans had established that. That prompted me to use my source to try and nail this down. Let's prove that this train station didn't exist until '94. So I managed to get hold of the construction permits, which showed that the train station was not approved for construction until September 1993. There was an image taken by a press photographer on the 25th of August, 93, from a helicopter. And his name is Stephen Starr, so he was working in an office in LA. The reason he was flown over Neverland on that day was because of the allegations, which had surfaced 2 days earlier. So, Steve, get yourself in a helicopter, take some pictures of Neverland from above. Those pictures show no train station. And I contacted Steve Starr personally, and he's confirmed that 25th of August, 93 is the correct date for when he took that picture. No train station. And then you've got the permits approved a month later. So you've got real solid evidence that there was no train station until the building didn't begin until late 93. It opened in 1994. And Michael Jackson in 94 was living in New York to record the History album. A couple of reasons. To get out of California because of the DA going after him. And there was an earthquake in LA in early 94 and he was a bit scared about that. So he wanted to move the entire operation to New York. Michael Jackson wasn't in LA in 94. But the point being, you've got a 2-year discrepancy there. Safechuck saying, abuse stopped, I was 14, it was 1992. Going into vivid detail about abuse happening in a train station, in an upstairs room. That's a massive discrepancy. Those are the two main ones, Wade Robson in the Grand Canyon and Jimmy Safechuck in the train station. And then we go back to Wade Robson's behaviour in the civil lawsuit. Wade Robson files his lawsuit in, I believe it was March 2013. He's saying that he realised he was abused in May 2012. Under US law, you've got 60 days from the period of knowing that you've been abused or realising you've been abused to file a creditor's claim. But Wade Robson filed that 10 months too late. To get around that, he claimed, but I didn't know that the Michael Jackson estate was open for administration. So, I didn't know they existed. I didn't know who to sue. But then evidence came out in that case that Wade Robson was aware of the Michael Jackson estate because in 2011, he'd met with John Branca, the co-executor of the estate, about the Cirque du Soleil show. So the judge ruled that Wade Robson had lied in his sworn declaration, lying under oath, under penalty of perjury, just to be able to sue.
Neverland was built as a safety bolt hole where, no one could get in. I mean, it was a big property. It was the size of Hyde Park, the whole area of it. Then he had his movie theatre built, which was like a 100-seater movie theatre, beautifully done, like a small cinema with a big screen. Then he had his fairgrounds built for his own entertainment. And then he had his zoo, so that he had kind of everything.
But Neverland was not really a home for him. That was somewhere he would return to go back and to show himself. And it was built really for sick children. He would have like Make-A-Wish Foundation, coach loads of kids, thousands and thousands would go through there every year. And then he would make sure he'd try and show his face and come out to the kids and so on. He would fly in from wherever he is. Because being in Neverland's no good. It's in the middle of nowhere. He used to hate the drive from Neverland to Los Angeles. He had a permanent suite and an apartment at one stage in Los Angeles. He had a permanent place at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel called the Michael Jackson Suite too in the end, because he used to rent it out full time. He needed to be in the city and do business, not up in the valley. He was rarely there. A lot of people make this big deal about an alarm that when you walk up to Michael Jackson's bedroom, you go along the corridor and an alarm goes off. That's completely true. Now, not only is that in Michael Jackson's house, since Michael's died, I've gone on to work for a lot of big superstars. They have alarms too, just the same thing. It's just a sensor walks along, just in case there's an intruder in the night, they can get to their escape route. Michael made sure that was all in place, his security team. So whenever you walk, yeah, alarm bells would go off in Michael's room to say someone's approaching. And that was for him to weigh up, everything okay, it's in the middle of the night, and so on. They also go on about this abuse room, the sexual secret room. And that angers me a lot, because for a start, let's talk about Michael's bedroom. It's 2 stories, it is massive, it's the normal size of a house, basically. And he does have a secret room, if you want to call it that. Now, that room was built before he bought Neverland. He recorded a video called Say, Say, Say with Paul McCartney there. It was called Sycamore Valley then. And he liked the property so much, he liked the ranch, he wanted to buy it. And it's quite standard for houses of that magnitude to have panic rooms. And they had a panic room already built in there. And that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about an abuse room, a sex abuse room, anything like that. That was where Michael went when the alarms went off, or when head of security or someone on Neverland alerted him to something's not right. He would run to and shut himself in, and he would have stuff in there that would entertain him, because he could be in there for some hours waiting for the police to turn up and so on, because Neverland's in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, he would have what's, you know, Disney films, and what may not be normal to normal people, but he ain't normal. He's Michael Jackson, you know, he's been raised differently. Now, Michael was guarded as much as the president, literally. I mean, he's the most famous man on earth. So from a bodyguard's point of view, it's very hard to understand how these allegations could be true, because he was the most protected man on earth. He had like security like the president. So if we talk about when we're on the road, you would have, you'd get there the day before, you'd do a recce of the hotel, you go through the fire exits and so on. You put security sensor mats outside his door or any entrance to wherever his suite is. You put a camera up top of his bedroom door, a camera outside the hallway door, a camera at the front, camera in the hallway. There'll be nobody coming either side. There'll be nighttime security, which was actually my brother-in-law, believe it or not, who would stand outside his door all night too. So it was unbelievable. Now, child abuse is a serious thing. It's a huge, serious matter. And I'm not here to discredit that in any way at all. I'm here to just prove from my side, from a bodyguard's point of view, and a friend who's been around Michael, how difficult it would have been for Wade and James to go unnoticed at any time, and for them to have what they said done to them by Michael when there's so many staff around. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I think people have always had in their minds like one way or the other, whether they believe he's innocent or guilty. And I don't think I think once they have that idea in their head, no matter how much evidence is put forward, I don't think anyone's mind ever gets swayed. And I do think once you've got that image in your head, you know, if you think that he's guilty, it doesn't matter how much evidence comes forward or how many people speak out and give their version of events. There's an image that the media, I think, want you to have of him. And it's almost like any evidence that comes out disproving what they've said, it's like they don't want to know. You know, if you consider what there is out there that actually shows him in, an innocent light versus what doesn't. I mean, it completely is like, staggering how much evidence there is to support the fact that he is an innocent man, and people don't want to hear it. They really don't. He went to court. He was acquitted. His Neverland home was raided. The FBI investigated him for 10 years, and people forget about that. And when it's brought up, it's like they don't care. They don't want to hear that. I could make a claim that something's happened to me, and people would believe it.
I don't think this is a deliberate hijacking or piggybacking onto Me Too. These allegations were first made way before that, 2013. What I do believe is that Me Too protects the documentary. The media are very, very scared, very wary of doing any investigation work or questioning this documentary whatsoever because of Me Too. Because, you know, we cannot challenge anymore. We cannot question alleged victims, which goes against all journalism. Journalism is about seeking the truth. If you upset some people, then so be it. So Me Too really protects Leaving Neverland, really protects Safechuck Robson and Dan Reed, because the media will not challenge the allegations. For example, the work I've done in the media, I know that people will probably look at that as victim shaming or being on the side of this alleged paedophile, but for me, that's not the case. If people see me as in a negative light because of the research I'm doing, so be it, because I want to seek the truth. I want to put this under the microscope and do my job as a journalist and to try and seek the truth. The coverage in the media has been, again, so one-sided, and no journalist can be bothered to do their job. It's all copy and paste each article, and all this Michael Jackson needs to be cancelled. No challenge made whatsoever, because journalists are scared of the damage to their reputations. People think I'm defending Michael Jackson. Directly, I guess, yes, I am. But what I'm trying to do is balance what didn't happen from the beginning. So from the beginning, Dan Reed, the director, not investigating the claims, not making a balanced 50-50 documentary where we interview Robson and Safechuck and then we challenge them about all the different inconsistencies, about the lawsuit, about the financial motive. Me Too is, at its core, a great cause. For people to be able to speak out, that's fantastic, that's great. The core values of Me Too are incredibly positive. But when that gags the media, that's incredibly dangerous. While it can't be completely ruled out that Michael Jackson abused Safechuck and Robson, you just never know. I can't sit here and say, Michael Jackson's innocent, this definitely didn't happen. But what I can say is that at least half a dozen things are inconsistent, they're lying in court. So if I'm sitting on the jury and I hear that those two have lied under oath to be able to sue for money, and just lying in general, and their story's not adding up, just so they can sue the Michael Jackson estate, I would think to myself, they've lied about that. What about the rest? Because all of it is testimony. There's no physical evidence, there's no forensic evidence. The only evidence that they've got is their oral testimony. And in that oral testimony, they've lied several times. So what about the rest of that oral testimony? Can you convict? Can you be sure that Michael Jackson is guilty when part of that oral testimony is irrefutably false? And that's what you'd have to ask yourself if you were a juror trying Michael Jackson. That's what it comes down to. Can you be sure that Robson and Safechuck are telling the truth about the whole thing? You know that 10, 20, 30% of it is provably a lie or incredibly inconsistent. What about the rest? That's the bottom line.
I will be acquitted and vindicated when the truth is told. Thank you.
Prince, I wish for you to learn about perseverance and confidence and the true meaning of success, which is love, and to know that you can reach any goal that your heart's desire. It's totally up to you. You can do anything you want to do, and I love you.
He was the most amazing father that you could ever witness.
Michael's kids adored him. They would follow him like little ducklings following their mother duck. He was just great, but he had boundaries with his children. They had to go to bed at a certain time. They had a tutor. They had to have 4 hours minimum every day of schooling. When I took my kids to see Michael at any time, they were always whisked off to do their schooling, and my kids were like, oh, do we have to do that? I said, no, it's fine, you're on holiday.
I think one thing that really stood out was how well brought up the children were. They weren't, I mean, these were children that could probably like have anything that they wanted, but they were just so polite and respectful to everyone.
Are you ready for this? Mm-hmm. Here we go. Good move.
Daddy?
Yes?
This is a run game.
Now you move that. Your turn. Good move, Applehead. Very good.
Daddy, we should live in a castle like this.
I know. I love that castle.
My kids absolutely adored Michael. I mean, I took my 2 younger daughters to Neverland and we spent about a week there. And they had access to everything. And at the end of the week, I was with Michael and unprompted, and I'm talking about, they would have been about 7, 8, 9 years old. And I said to them at the end of the week, I said, what was the best thing that you liked about Neverland? And they both turned around and said, the best thing about Neverland was being with Michael.
Daddy, thank you for my birthday cake. And I love you so much. And I love my daddy so much. You're the best daddy in the whole world.
I think before leaving Neverland, the allegation had almost been forgotten. After Michael died, people were willing to celebrate his music again, who he was. You know, there's a saying, isn't it, that you only appreciate something really when it's gone. And after Michael died, no one was really talking about that anymore. The allegations, the plastic surgery, I mean, it was being spoken about, but ultimately it was back to Michael Jackson, the performer. That has totally changed now with Leaving Neverland. Obviously, you've got the fans who still adore him, never going to turn their back on him. You've got many people, you know, normal members of the public who still don't believe the allegations. But he's also got these people who were sort of in the middle, who have now gone to the other side and they're not listening to him anymore, and well, they say they're not. So it has had an effect on his legacy for sure. But I think, again, because of how the allegations made in the film have backfired slightly now, people are starting to challenge them now. So I think slowly but surely it will recover, the situation will recover. But I think it's a testament to Michael Jackson that he can be accused of these horrendous crimes on 3 occasions, and yet we're still talking about him in musical terms.
This is it. I mean, this is really it. This is the final curtain call.
I just remember Michael as just being a very generous, very kind, very, you know, he'd always listen to what you were saying. It wasn't always about him or what he was doing. In fact, very little. He'd listen an awful lot, and he used to listen to my children, used to ask them how they were doing at school, you know, what their favorite subjects were, what they wanted to do when they grew up. And he took a lot of time finding out about what other people and what their interests were. He was a very, very good father, to the point where it used to annoy me, the fact that how good a father he was, because it used to make me look not such a good dad. And just a free spirit, really. He was a free bird. I miss Michael a lot. I miss him a lot, and my kids miss him. They miss his kids, and it's just such a shame that the man isn't around with us.
I mean, just how caring and how loving he was. Like, he had so much love to give, and I would give anything if he was to be still around. But in a way, because, you know, of his name being dragged through the mud, as sad as it sounds, I'm kind of glad he's not here to see this, because he would be heartbroken. He really would. When when it all first came out, he was absolutely devastated, and like he just couldn't comprehend how people could think that about him. And to be honest, he couldn't comprehend how anyone could even do that to a child, let alone him. So then for those accusations to, you know, be made towards him, he was heartbroken. I don't think he was really the same after. I think he was just a broken man, really, to be honest.
He was an intelligent, smart guy, not some comic figure that people seem to think he is. He was an intelligent man. And that intelligence is not shown. And I think that was maybe his biggest mistake. Had he shown the businessman Michael Jackson, which he did a little bit with the Beatles catalogue decision and a few other wise moves he made, then they would understand him more. But yeah, he's misunderstood, and it's a shame that we're not celebrating his music and dance now on his 10th year anniversary of his passing and having to deal with stuff that's been dealt with. But he never really recovered from that. That broke his heart.
Bring the box, Daddy.
Counting your blessings, biding your time. When you lay me down sleeping, my heart is weeping because I'm keeping a blood for all. Not by myself, help me.
Help.
This one's for all the lost children. This one's for all the lost children wishing you well. And wishing you. Where's you guys' rhythm? Come on. Wishing you well. And wishing them all. Okay?
We know what Peter Pan represents. Never growing up, staying childlike forever. Michael, in adulthood, sees himself as Peter Pan, remaining childlike forever. Michael never wanted to grow up. Whenever anyone mentioned it to him, he would just cry because he really believed that, really deeply believed that. And in the Bashir interview as well, he says, Bashir asks him the question you're asking me now about Peter Pan, and he says, I am Peter Pan. Bashir says, no, you're not, you're Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson says, I'm Peter Pan in my heart.
Have you seen my childhood? I'm searching for the world that I come from, 'cause I've been looking around and lost and found of my heart.
When Michael talks about the song Childhood from the History album, he says, our personal history begins in childhood, and the song Childhood is a reflection of my life. It's about the pain, some of the joys, some of the dreaming, some of the mental adventures that I took because of the different lifestyle I had in being a child performer. I was born on stage, and childhood, it's my mirror, it's my story.
The pain